So I'm very excited to introduce my good friend Connie, who is the founder of BitGive, which has been around since 2013, the very first 501c3 in the Bitcoin space. And I know Connie. We originally met through Tahoe Silicon Mountain.
Yeah.
And yeah. So I'm not going to do a long introduction because she's going to tell you all about BitGive. And excited to be here.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, good evening, everyone. Can I say evening? It's 6, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's nice to be here. Now I'm in Truckee, but was in Sacramento for a long time and spent some time up here in Nevada City, and I love to go on the Yuba River. So I have a fondness for the area. So as Ellen said, I'm Connie Gallippi. I'm the founder of BitGive and the first nonprofit in Bitcoin. I'm also now on the board of the Tahoe Silicon Mountain in Truckee, as well as the Sierra Business Council. So I'm very committed to nonprofit work, to say the least. But tonight I'm going to talk about BitGive, of course. So part of what I often start out with is like a little bit not too technical on the background of Bitcoin and the basics around Bitcoin and blockchain. I noticed you guys had a speaker before on this topic, so I don't know how many of you guys were here for that. Okay, and how many of you guys know a little bit about Bitcoin and blockchain? A fair amount. Okay, so maybe I can quickly go through all this. I don't like to jump past it. In a lot of cases, people don't know much about it. So, so Bitcoin was first introduced in 2009. It was pretty politically, charged after the collapse of the market. There's this sort of general cap of 21 million, which essentially makes it like a deflationary currency that has an algorithm that runs out to, I think they said 2040 they anticipate. It was very small community early on, and it's grown now over the last 9 years to be thousands of people all over the world. Last year there was this huge spike in the price, and that also had a huge spike of interest. And the community just completely blew up. It's been interesting to see that evolution over the past 5 years. Right now, Bitcoin's about 6,000, but it fluctuates like a stock. And there's a lot of other use cases that people are putting out around blockchain technology that are beyond like a digital cash or digital currency use case. So there's a lot of other issues and other topics being talked about around blockchain. I also wanted to kind of touch on the decentralized systems versus centralized system, as well as distributed systems, so the whole concept behind Bitcoin. And I get a lot of questions about blockchain now because it's kind of this elusive term that's been used in lots of different ways. But for the Bitcoin network, it was very specifically designed to be decentralized and distributed as well. And the whole point was that it would be outside of the traditional systems of banks and financial institutions and government control and those kinds of things. So the idea is that it's a distributed network of computers all over the world that are running the same system and the same ledger, and consensus-based agreements on transactions are then posted to a public ledger that anyone can see. So there's no third party that you have to trust as far as a bank or government institution, and it takes all of that essentially power and influence away from those centralized systems. It's also, if you don't have a centralized system where it is one point of attack for hacking or any sort of security or fraud issues, you can't really do that when it's thousands of nodes all over the world. So it's pretty cool stuff. I think just those basic things are really interesting. And then, I guess I didn't talk about some of the other really cool things, like cryptography provides a lot of security, so the transactions are guaranteed to go to who you intended them to go to and no one else. A lot of reduced costs in transferring funds even across the world, and reduced times as well. So Today, it could take, up to a month or more to move money and get it into the hands of someone that you want it to get to, especially in developing economies in like really rural or remote areas. And with Bitcoin, you can do that almost instantly. So it's pretty remarkable. And there's much lower fees. You have to pay like a network fee at the base bare minimum. You can do peer-to-peer and only use the Bitcoin network and only have a fee to use that network, and that could be it. There are lots of companies and services that are piling on top of this and provide different services along the way that do have costs, but that's not necessary if you just want to peer-to-peer send money to someone, even in the middle of nowhere. It's pretty amazing. It is a map of the world, and essentially what it's showing is where all the Bitcoin nodes are, and you can see how they're like largely focused in U.S. and Europe, developed countries, developed economies. But there are some nodes, like even in Botswana and really far-reaching areas in the world, and it's growing over time, and it's always changing over time. If you want to run a Bitcoin node and be part of the network, you can do that, and you can decide to pull out at any time. It doesn't matter. And we can get into a lot of other things around how this network works and why people want to be a part of it. But essentially, there's an incentive to be a part of the network that's a kickback of Bitcoin if you are the first to essentially solve a block of transactions and post it to the public ledger. So that's why people want to be a part of it. And there's a whole other world around that. It's called mining that we could get into in another conversation, but that's essentially the incentive for why people want to have a node. So there's a lot of other cryptocurrencies out there. In the last couple of years, there's been altcoins, there's ICOs, which is essentially like they create their own token and they use it to fundraise a business idea. So it replaces venture capital, essentially. It stands for initial coin offering. That's also a whole other conversation, but there's a lot of that going on. And then there's other blockchains like Ethereum out there. There's other systems, coins, business ideas like Ripple. These are the ones that have been hitting the news more, so they're like often heard of or people ask me about. There's thousands of them, but these are the ones that have kind of hit the headlines. Ripple's kind of focused on banks and institutions, financial institutions. Ethereum is like trying to combine Bitcoin with smart contracts. And essentially, that's also another whole other conversation. But there's all these things out there that people are seeing in the news. There's also things that are just simply tokens. They're not necessarily a digital currency. They may not even have a blockchain at all. So there's a lot of activity in the space, but and it's hard to distinguish these things sometimes when you're not in the tech. And people get, I think, confused a lot about it. So, but it's really important to understand the difference between a token versus another digital currency or a different blockchain than the Bitcoin blockchain, and why there are all these different things out there. Some of them are private, like IBM is putting out Hyperledger. It's kind of like a corporate-focused blockchain that can be used for private closed systems. Personally, I don't understand the point of that. Like why you would need a blockchain for that, because personally, for me, the beauty of the blockchain is having a decentralized system. So it's public and it's truly transparent and it's truly accountable because there aren't one or a few people in charge that can change the code or whatever they want to do, change the data. But apparently people seem to think that there are business cases around private blockchains and they're working on them. So let's see, I guess that's enough on that. So this is, really kind of the market cap right now. You can see the majority is in Bitcoin, over 50%. These numbers are from December, so It's changing all the time, but essentially the Bitcoin has a hold on the market cap, and then Ethereum is pretty close behind. It's growing, of course, as the price changes. Like I was saying earlier, it's like a stock. The market cap grows and also shrinks. So in December, it was a $500 billion market cap. But that was when the price of Bitcoin was at 20,000. So a little different now at 6,000, right? There's also been a very significant shift in adoption over the years. So 2009 was when Bitcoin first came out, and then there's been this whole proliferation of other blockchains and coins and projects. But essentially over the years, you can see how 2016, essentially it was where there was a huge push in, lots of major financial institutions that you guys all would recognize that are getting involved in this technology. So it's significant to the adoption of the technology. A lot of them started out with just doing research groups, what is this? We'll put our people on it, kind of thing. And now a lot of them have their own projects. So it's interesting. And also from a government perspective, that's kind of been trailing in the sense behind financial institutions and more innovative tech-minded sectors. But there is some interest in governments wanting to look at this for different use cases. And Dubai is kind of the one that hit the headlines the most around we're going to be the first to have everything on the blockchain by 2020, and they have this whole team on it, and who knows what that means, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty exciting. You need these really pioneering, innovative leaders to say, we're going to take a look at this, we're going to see what we can do with it and show everyone else what they've been able to do. Otherwise, we never really get very far. So what I focus on with BitGive is how to leverage the benefits of this technology for philanthropy and for nonprofits, and largely the ones that move money cross-border. But it is even useful for smaller nonprofits if they want to benefit from the transparency aspects of it, which I really didn't get into earlier, but that public ledger is a way to be transparent, right? So for a nonprofit, if they want to show their donors or they want to show the public what are they doing with the money, they can leverage the transparency of that public ledger and the blockchain, which needs to be a truly decentralized system in order to really be transparent, to show people what they're doing. So that's what we're kind of focused on, but also leveraging all those other benefits that the tech provides for nonprofits. So they can move money faster. They can get it there on the ground and have a real impact much sooner. They're paying less in fees, so more money is going to create that impact, or if it's a relief effort or whatever it is, more money is going to the cause. The security is also really great, because then with the cryptography, okay, it's going to this person and no one else is going to be able to get to it unless it's the person that's intended for. So that's really great. And then I mentioned the transparency. And the access is what made me the most interested. Was when I first heard about this technology, I immediately was like, wow, you can reach anyone, anywhere, and if they have even a feature phone, like those old Nokias, you can send them money. They have to have an internet connection, but that's it. And that just blew my mind. So essentially that's what the impetus behind BitGive really was. But and then for philanthropic solutions, so it's also okay, we can generate a new set of donors, right? Who are these crypto people? This is a whole new audience. Your typical donor is female in their mid-50s. A crypto person, no. They're, typically male, typically younger, tech-oriented. It's a whole new market for a nonprofit. It's also new revenue stream. So it can supplement, it's not going to replace, raising money in lots of other ways, and nonprofits need to think of all the ways possible that they could raise money. But this is a great way to do that. I mentioned earlier, expediting putting funds into action. So if they can get there faster, in some cases you're saving a whole month. Not only are you, reacting faster, but that could mean people's lives are saved that would never have made it otherwise. So it means a lot. And then reducing the costs. And also the transparency aspect is really engaging for donors, right? If they can see that their money got to where it was supposed to go and what it was used for, and what we're combining that data with is results reporting, so they can see pictures, videos, reports from on the ground, then they're much more engaged with what's going on, and then they gain more trust and loyalty with that organization. So we're focused on this, being the first Bitcoin nonprofit and being around now for over 5 years. We really are the pioneer that's been driving this sort of use case and thinking about how this tech can help nonprofits and putting those ideas to projects on the ground. So that's pretty exciting. And what we like about it too is that there's no boundaries. So for nonprofits that are fundraising, like for example, say UNICEF or Save the Children or all those large ones that have offices all over the world, they're kind of like individual fundraising centers, right? They fundraise in one location, but they're also fundraising in all these other locations, and then they're sending the money wherever it needs to go. So they're dealing with all these different currencies and moving money around and converting it, and it's a lot of money lost, a lot of time, very frustrating. If you operate with Bitcoin, it's like essentially like a global currency. Like you may need to convert it on the ground to get something done, but otherwise you can move it around and fundraise in it and all of that without worrying about a lot of that stuff. I mentioned earlier the access, which really interested me the most. So it benefits the organizations that have projects in the middle of nowhere, which in many cases, that's what's happening, right? They don't have access to financial services. They have to come somewhere far away to get money. Then they're carrying cash on the ground. They're a target. It's very unsafe for NGO staff. People know who they are, and they're traveling however long with cash, lots of cash, things like that. So there's a lot of benefits to the tech that we're working hard to figure out how to find ways to package those and leverage them and make them easy for nonprofits and donors to see. So historically, for like the first probably 3 years, we were so early in this tech and the whole world was like, what is this? That the majority of what we were doing was outreach, like to nonprofits explaining what this technology is all about and why they should care and what benefits they could get from it. And then an easy way to open the door with a nonprofit is to help them raise money, right? So we would run campaigns for nonprofits in Bitcoin. So we were supporting them, and we were also rallying the Bitcoin community around these different causes and projects. So it was really fun. So this is kind of essentially what we were able to do in the first couple of years. Some of them are much larger projects than others, but we were a tiny, tiny team. So we essentially would do one at a time. And we would set a goal, and we'd work really hard at figuring out how to reach that goal, and then we would move on to the next project or NGO. But our aim early on was to establish a global mission. So we very purposely worked in different areas around the world so that we could establish that. A lot of people ask me, like, why aren't you guys doing anything in the US? And it's like, well, we will, but we're a global organization and we have to establish that out the gate, which is hard to do, but I think we did a good job. So now we're focusing on GiveTrack, and it's our new platform that we launched in October of last year in a minimum viable product. So it's a very basic platform that we're testing and running pilots on, but it is live at givetrack.org if you guys want to check it out. And I'll show you, kind of just walk you through it a little bit. The whole idea is to build a platform where we bring all of this together. So the tech is really confusing, and like I was explaining earlier, there's all kinds of coins and blockchains and all this stuff out there. We wanted to bring together donors and charities in a simple manner. So we built essentially like a fundraising platform for charities to put projects out and for donors to come and make contributions, but that in the back end, essentially, it's leveraging all this tech. So it's built on using Bitcoin. It's on the Bitcoin blockchain. It encourages not only fundraising in Bitcoin, but moving the funds in Bitcoin to other parts of the world, and then reporting out on projects. And that's the idea, is to make it simple and bring it all into one place and to test the concept. And we're actually now building a much more robust version of this platform that will come out in December. But what we have live now is, like I said, our minimum viable product. It was launched at the end of October last year, so we're coming up on about a year. And when we launched it, we had 2 pilot projects in Kenya and originally in Indonesia. And then we had to change. There's a lot of things going on in the world around this tech. And in Indonesia, the government decided to make using Bitcoin illegal. So we're like, okay. So you never really know what's going to happen. And we had to shift that effort to another project in India. But we were able to do that. And our goal was to raise the funds in Bitcoin, track them, transfer them on the blockchain, and track them for their use, and to deliver results as to what was done with those funds. So it looks kind of like your typical fundraising platform, like a Kickstarter or something similar, but it's for charity projects. And you can kind of choose from what's available. And if you look further into a project, you can see kind of like what their goal is, how close they are to it, what the project's all about, that kind of thing. Pretty standard stuff. You can share it on social media. But where it gets different is this, which is looks pretty wonky right now with an MVP. But the idea is that once you make a contribution to a project, you have a page on our platform that's your donations. And you can see each one that you contributed to, each project, how much it was, and you can watch it on the blockchain. So it's still pretty rudimentary, but this piece on the side of the blue box is the, what we call like geek mode or whatever, but it's the data on the blockchain. So you can click even on the transaction, and it will go to the public ledger and show you your transaction. It's a little hard to understand what all that means, so what we've tried to do is have the charities explain each address as they pass it down, so that it has a real world name or label for you as a donor to see, oh, this long stretch of numbers and letters means that they actually sent some money to their partner in Kenya, or whatever. So we're working on improving a lot of this, and it's an MVP, so it definitely has some areas where it could be improved. But we're ready to share our new product soon. So. And then this is how they essentially report out. It's also pretty rudimentary, but it's a way for them to show you, write a report, give you pictures, give you videos, and explain what happened with the funds. So you can see them moving, you can see where they went, and then you can see the results from that. So then we did a couple more pilots on the platform. I think we have a total of 6 or 7 at this point. There's 3 that are live now. One's actually closing today. So if you have Bitcoin and you're interested in protecting wildlife in Africa, the project that's closing today will train wildlife rangers in 4 parts of Africa to understand and use forensics. And there's New York detectives going there and doing the training, and then materials are provided for them to have their own forensic kits, so they can start to catch poachers, essentially, is the whole point. But that's an example of the kind of projects we have. We did raise a fair amount of funding last December, January, when the price was up really high. And we had been around for a really long time and operating like on this shoestring budget, like just doing what we could with like nothing really. And then all of a sudden, Bitcoin went to 20,000 and we raised a lot of money. So we were able to finally hire a team and take everything to the next level, which is hopefully what everyone will get to see in December, is this product. We're building this out to be a real robust product. Um, and then we also started a partnership with the University of Edinburgh because this whole world of blockchain and Bitcoin and crypto really exploded, and everyone seems to be, excited, interested, skeptical, you name it, about all of this. And we have a lot of experience and data and stories and connections on a global scale based on what we've been doing, that we're going to take a look at that and try to come up with really hard research evidence and research challenges of what's going on out there and what's going on the ground. In the Bitcoin and blockchain community, or the crypto community, there is an awful lot of talk. There's so much out there. And for the most part, it's ideas. And that's where this ICO thing came from. Someone has an idea, they sell you a part of it, kind of like a share, so they can go off and build it. And I think they said like 80% of them failed within like a month or something. I mean, there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of ideas and a lot of talk, but there isn't a lot of real projects on the ground and actual data to look at to figure out what's going on and what the challenges are. So we're trying to push that forward with our work. And the University of Edinburgh is very excited about it. And we're now partnering with some folks in Brazil as well, both academic and business people. And we're hoping to highlight what the challenges are, because there are many, especially just in an early tech. But on a global ecosystem level, there's lots of challenges still. And so anyway, we're hoping to partner and make that more official through university research. So our new product that I've been talking about, we're calling version 1.0. Is coming out in December, and the main improvements are, right now with the MVP you have to have Bitcoin. That's obviously very limiting, but it was an extremely difficult hurdle to get across legally and regulatory wise. So we're very happy that we can provide a solution with the next version where a donor can come with what we call fiat, or government-backed currency like US dollars or euros or whatever. The platform has a very, very interesting way of making that into Bitcoin where we don't trigger any regulatory issues for us, which is great. We're also integrating smart contracts, which is another very interesting aspect of this whole new technology and sector. And essentially it's like programming a contract, like if this, then that is automated. So the way we're applying that is setting up milestones for the projects, and the phases of the funding are released through milestones based on them reporting and approval of that reporting by multiple parties. So they can get essentially the first slug of funds to start, and then they have to come back and report on the platform in a particular way, how the money was used, and show the results. Some of it will be in fiat, some of it will be in Bitcoin. And once they've done that and multiple parties agree that they've done what they should have done with the funds, then the next phase of funds would be released via a smart contract to the charity. And then they can continue with their work. This is also very like cutting edge stuff that people talk a lot about and there's no real use cases for. And then I just explained the milestones. So. We're also making it scalable, so the MVP is really, pretty hands-on with the charities. It's, hand-selecting charities and really working with them to onboard to the platform. That's obviously not scalable, so the next version will be, you can sign up yourself, you can, make sure you meet all the criteria, and we have APIs that we're checking to make sure that organizations are legit, that kind of stuff, so that it can scale more quickly. It's much more improved UI and UX, as you can see. I know this screen is pretty bright, but this looks much prettier, right, than the other stuff I was showing you. So we've worked very hard to do that. And then the back end is much more robust than our MVP. MVP is, shoestring budget kind of stuff. So this is our board. We have a really amazing, strong board. Many of them have been around for 4 or 5 years and have done a lot to support the organization. We have VCs, we have legal experts, we have early veterans from Silicon Valley, you name it. So we have a strong, we have a compliance guy. So we have a really strong board that's helped us get this far. What I didn't add is our advisors, and actually Ellen has joined us and is an advisor of BitGive, so we're really happy to have her. We have a fair amount of advisors that we kind of tap for different things as needed. And then this is our team, which has grown, for me, exponentially. It used to just be me. In the first year and a half, I was unpaid and had another job. So this is a big difference, big change. We have engineering and technical staff, and also a lot of operations and outreach and digital folks. We also have a whole nother dev team that's, I think, 10 people in Argentina and Uruguay that are building the platform. So we grew a lot really quickly. We also just have a lot of great support, either pro bono or otherwise, through legal law firms, PR firms, a lot of amazing groups that have supported us to help us get to where we are. We have a lot of great press. We've been in a lot of mainstream press, which is pretty exciting. Just recently, we were in the Huffington Post, and trying to think of the other one, but I think that was the most recent in the last few weeks. But we've hit the headlines over the years, and many different aspects of our work along the way. I can share these slides so that you guys can look at stuff if you want, but this is just kind of a quick set of highlights. And that's it. So, do you guys have any questions?
Who's providing you the original funding to get you started?
To get started, so we ran a founding donors campaign in 2014. I think we started it when we got our IRS approval. And then we ran it for, I don't know, a year or so. But we have a series of founding donors at different tiers, levels. Some are Bitcoin companies, some are Bitcoin, original Bitcoin core folks who were in it for a long time. Some are people we don't know, because you can be pseudo-anonymous with Bitcoin. So it's a handful, but they're on our website, yeah.
You said you made a lot of money when it went to 20,000.
Yes.
What happened when it went down to 6,000?
That's a good question. So when it was at 20,000, we did get 2 very large anonymous donations. We don't know who they are. One was the Pineapple Fund, which hit the news quite a bit. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but they gave, I think, $56 million of Bitcoin away in a very short period of time. Nobody knows who it is. And yes, it has gone down a lot. So our mission is all about Bitcoin. So we, over the years, have always held the majority of our assets in Bitcoin. We essentially walk our talk. There's also a lot of policies around nonprofits, we shouldn't be day trading, that kind of stuff. So we've always held in Bitcoin. When this big spike happened and all this money came in, we didn't cash it out. We didn't cash it all out. We cashed some out, so we had a budget to operate on and build GiveTrack, and we can hire people, and we know we can pay them. But we left the majority of it in Bitcoin, and that's what we've always done. So it has gone down a fair amount, but we also truly believe in the tech, and that's why we hold long-term assets in Bitcoin. So we're not really concerned about it. We do have to kind of fluctuate our efforts, and over the years, this is not the first time that has happened. Over the years, we've faced that before, but it's all about who we are, so it's, that's what we do. Yes?
Given that crypto is fiat, just like government-backed currencies, how do you guys go about reconciling that for long-term plans, and do you guys have plans for accepting possibly commodity-backed cryptos in the future?
I'm not sure I understand the question. So crypto is not really like fiat, but are you saying in a particular way it is? Or what are you getting at? I'm sorry.
If crypto, hence the term crypto, is all ones and zeros, that's made up out of thin air. So if for some reason the digital system goes down, it's no longer existing.
Right.
So
Okay.
if there was a need for commodity-backed currencies, is your platform going to be accepting of something like that in the future?
That's not something we've talked about really, but I think, even the traditional, financial institutions have the same problem. They have fractional reserves. So a lot of your money is digital and would disappear as well. You wouldn't be able to go there and demand your little piece of a gold block anymore. It doesn't work that way anymore. So it would be a global financial crisis on any currency. So.
And that's not anticipated?
I mean, who knows? You could ask anybody that question, right? I mean, nobody knows. Yeah.
Well, the concept of Bitcoin or
The concept of fractional reserve banking sets up a house of cards where it's inevitable.
That's an all-day conversation.
Right. I know. I mean, that's
That's what
yeah.
That's what your company's about, is currency.
It's important for any banking or financial institution as well. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's way beyond what Bitcoin is about or what BitGive is doing. It would be a global financial crisis of any currency.
Wouldn't it be a smart investment, though, to be able to have something that is more tangible and has intrinsic value?
Sure. So would Bank of America and Wells Fargo. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't quite understand what you're getting at, other than it's a universal problem. So, yeah. I don't know. Yes.
How do you deal with the validity of the data that is being entered at the endpoint? So when I saw that you have earthquake relief in Nepal, one person obviously is taking 10 Bitcoins and is buying rice, and then that gets entered into the ledger. But how do you verify that part, which is most likely to be fraudulent or?
Yeah, so there still is the challenge. So the biggest challenge we have is once you get the funds as far as you can, even if they're in someone's hand on a Nokia, if they can't use Bitcoin to buy the rice, they're going to have to convert it for now. And I see this as like email in the 90s. Not everyone had an email address. I always tell this story, but I would email my mom through her boss, and I would put the top, the subject with "for Maria," and then she would print it out and hand it to my mother. I mean, nobody does that anymore. So someday that won't be a problem, but right now it's the biggest challenge we have is how they can use it on the ground, and if not, how they convert it, and that's where you lose the true transparency to the very end of the line. If you can get to the point where you can use Bitcoin to buy the rice, then that problem is solved.
But in an earthquake
But-
situation, power is down, situation is chaotic. I mean, that's exactly the situation where somebody needs cash
Right,
to buy 10 tons of rice or something.
right. And right now, there's no way around that. So that last mile is still a challenge. The best we can do is what we're doing with this next version through milestone reporting and third-party signatures to release funds for the next batch. So you're not constantly throwing money down a black hole and not knowing what's happening to it. You can at least put a stop to it. And it's automated through smart contracts reporting. So it's really the best that's out there now. And hopefully as time goes on and technology evolves and the ecosystem is much more broadly applicable, then we won't have as many challenges. But it is still a challenge, that last mile.
I heard you say that.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm just telling him you're next.
Oh, yes.
I heard you say that you're using offshore development teams.
Yes.
Who are you using to validate your offshore development so that you don't end up with backdoors so that at some point in the future you suddenly are wiped out?
That's a good question. Well, so first of all, our team is actually the most expert team in the world for what we're doing. So it's not like couldn't find a team here to do it. We're working with, the slide I had up was Koi Banks is the organization, and they're the best at smart contracts and working with rootstock technology. So in some ways, it's a necessity to do that. As far as checking on things, we have a VP of engineering that's here in California. And he's in charge of the team, and he has a technical background, Silicon Valley experience, all of that. So he's the one looking at the code, managing the team. And then once we're ready to do testing, we will do security testing, pen testing, all of that stuff as well. And we've done that on the MVP too. Because we're dealing with people's money, so we're not gonna, take that many chances. Yeah, we hope. Not right now, but we hope, yeah.
But you're not holding it.
No, and that's the tricky regulatory issues I was alluding to. We're not allowed to hold funds on behalf of others or convert them or transfer them. If we do, we're triggering money transmitter licensing and money service businessing regulations, which is basically like you're a bank. And there's a huge amount of regulation and licensing around that that's way beyond our costs or desires, really. So we've designed it. It's taken us a very long time to do it in a way where we're not actually touching the money at all.
Hold on minutes.
Yes.
Well, in terms of touching the money, are you in terms of your employees, or are any of your development team taking pay in Bitcoin, or
Some of them are, yeah.
some of them actually are? Okay.
Yeah,
that's-
it's optional, of course, but some of them do. Yeah, some of them that are in Argentina, of course, because there's a lot of issues in Argentina with capital controls, and here as well. So, yeah.
Oh, thank you. I was just curious if you're partnering with an exchange or somebody else who actually does. I mean, somebody has to hold the Bitcoin and distribute it as per your instruction.
Right.
or-
Yes, so
Yeah.
this has been a big challenge, but we are essentially, in order to allow donors to come with fiat and not have to already have Bitcoin, we're funneling them through a service called Uphold, which is essentially an exchange, and they will convert fiat into Bitcoin and then send it to the charity's address. So we're not touching anything, but we're facilitating that exchange. And then the funding is ultimately sent to a multi-signature wallet. So we're also not holding it, but we do have one of the signatures. So there's multiple signers on this wallet, the charity, us, and we're hoping to have at least 3 other third parties, and that not all would be required. So like some of them are backup keys if somebody loses their key or whatever. But essentially it's a multi-signature wallet that the funds are held in. Once they're released in Bitcoin to a wallet that the charity designates.
Are you working with any other entities, like, for instance, like IBM, which has a big project going with mainly the contracts?
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing much with the financial, but they do have a number of projects where they're doing smart contracts.
Yeah, they have their own technology called Hyperledger. So it's essentially their own blockchain that they've created, and then they're generating different use cases that they can apply their technology to.
Is it different than the open source?
Very much so.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure. Anybody else?
I'll ask a really basic question because
Sure.
I'm still trying to understand this whole thing. So your goal is to be a platform that people can use to, like, list themselves in order to receive funds for nonprofits, or are you more about empowering the nonprofits and show them how to accept funds? Because I'm thinking, for a nonprofit, why wouldn't they just say, hey, we accept donations in Bitcoin. This is where you send the money, versus using you.
Right,
So I'm just trying to understand,
what the difference is.
right, and what your
Yeah.
market is. Yeah.
So there is a big difference. So we love when charities accept Bitcoin. We hope many more do. But it is a simple thing to do. It's like you can sign up with essentially like a payment processor that operates similar to PayPal, and you can say, we accept Bitcoin now, and there's a really quick, easy way for a donor to send you Bitcoin. The payment processor will turn it into fiat and put it in your bank account, so you don't have to worry about it at all. You basically just put this thing on your website, and then you accept Bitcoin. But that's very different than leveraging the technology, right? Because if you are accepting Bitcoin, you're opening to new donor base and maybe a new revenue stream, but that's all you're doing, right? You're not keeping it in Bitcoin, you're not leveraging the transparency, you're not moving it to your partners across the world for faster and cheaper and more securely, all those things. So that's what we're trying to actually leverage the tech itself. But I think it's still so early. Even though we're 5 years in, we're still so early that this is what most charities are sort of becoming comfortable with, is like, oh, maybe we should accept Bitcoin. And they're looking at the volatility and how do we get a wallet and all this stuff. How does this fit into our current policies? That kind of stuff. So we have a ways to go. But that's pretty common, I think, in innovation.
So a major part of your mission is just the education itself as well.
Yeah, it's still really early. But what's interesting is it is growing more, and there's a lot more attention to this. So like all the headlines have been helpful. The Pineapple Fund effort was very helpful. I even did an interview on BBC. I mean, it really hit the news a lot. And so people are paying more attention, right? And actually, next month, I'm going to an international fundraising conference with global NGOs, their fundraising staff, their innovation staff, speaking about blockchain and Bitcoin. I have 2 different sessions, and there's like 3 or 4 other sessions that other people are talking about blockchain and crypto. So it's clearly catching on, even in the nonprofit sector. But yeah, it's going to take some time. Yeah.
So it sounds like the majority of your funds have actually come in Bitcoin. So they've
Absolutely.
actually been from people that have been generating Bitcoin that most likely were not giving to charitable organizations in the past, I suspect.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I would say, I mean, I don't have the numbers, but I'd say it's at least 90% has been Bitcoin. Yeah, I mean, and sometimes people ask me, like, do you even accept like regular money? And I'm like, yes, we do. You can write a check, you can do PayPal. But yeah, it's been mostly Bitcoin, so, which is cool. I love that. Yeah, and there's a lot of tax benefits to that, which I have a whole other talk I do on that, but.
Currency transfer thing, having had to do wire transfers to Italy and other places, it's a pain in the rears.
It is, and it's really expensive, and sometimes it never gets there.
What's the whole money got there?
That's good.
Some of the ones coming back,
Yeah.
they got there too eventually. But
Yeah, and it's like if you're sending it to somewhere like remote, then they may be able to go to a Western Union, but they're going to have to go there, stand in line, wait however long. It takes probably a week anyway before they can even go get in line. And then Western Union takes like 13%. I mean, there's so many benefits to just simply moving the money in Bitcoin. Like,
you know, pharmacy, you already mentioned. So I've got some friends in Nepal. We saw them send money there and transferring that thing. But the problem they're going to have, they get it in Bitcoin unless they getting somebody to accept Bitcoin in Nepal is very difficult. And,
Yeah.
Had
Yes.
to convert it and try to convert Bitcoin and Nepalese money. And
Yes.
it's a bit of a problem.
This is my
That's
daily challenge. Yeah. Yeah. Hence the relationship with the University of Edinburgh. And I do a lot of just talking, podcasts, whatever I can to explain that, you know, there's a lack of investment in building out the ecosystem. And that's the problem. Because I've actually looked into Nepal and many other places. And it's very limiting because the investment is going into the developed world and into exchanges for trading. And it's all about the first world and their apps and them making money off of this. And it's very, very frustrating for someone like me who's trying to actually leverage the tech itself and use it to move money globally when there's nowhere for them to convert it. And it's a step in the process, like the email needs a printer in 1992. Now it doesn't need a printer, but right now we need printers everywhere, you know? So, yes.
How many other firms, who are your competitors? How many other firms are doing what you're building out to do? And the second half of the question, are you looking to do a charity coin to replace Bitcoin at some point that would then be usable by any charity?
Two very good questions. So competition-wise, there are a few other platforms that have a similar goal, but they're working on Ethereum. So they're, to me, not really competition. But, you know, and really in charity, nothing's competition. But because they're working with Ethereum, we purposely didn't choose that blockchain. So I don't consider it necessarily a problem. And I hope that they're successful anyway, because then that means that more charities are raising money in crypto and leveraging blockchain technology. So, and then your second question, as far as doing a coin, so we've been asked this many times. We've been asked about doing an ICO too, back when they were actually still happening. And you know, I don't think so. I mean, we even looked into the token idea because we thought it might help us with all the regulatory issues of at least internally moving money around, but it really didn't get around that issue either. Someday it might be something we use as like a reward. Like you know, you get a token in equivalent amount to what you've donated, and that token is a reward that you can, you know, then give to another charity or whatever. But still, I question all that stuff. I'm trying to keep it like bare basics. Like, let's figure it out and do it legit.
At least lend a degree of stability. It would not be something that would be subject to the volatility of speculative investors.
Potentially, theoretically, yeah. At some point, you got to convert it back, though. So if, you know, like there are things like the rootstock technology we're using, the smart contracts technology. They have the smart Bitcoin. So it's a two-peg system, like a side chain, essentially. So you move the money off, it becomes smart Bitcoin in the equivalent amount of Bitcoin. But when you move it back on, the price is still changed. So, you know, you can move it off and do what you want with it because the Bitcoin blockchain can only handle so much. And so it allows you to do more fancy things with smart contracts. But once you move it back, it's still going to convert to whatever the current value is. So. All right. You guys have great questions. Thank you.